Alrighty, everyone, welcome back. This is the third video of the Google Chrome Developer Tools tutorials. And in the last video, we went over the console and learned about some different things you can do here, really helpful for finding errors, and also helpful for checking JavaScript code. There's a lot of different things that it's helpful for. In this video, we're going to focus on the Sources tab. Okay, in the last video, I made a nice little typo with my ID right here. So let's make sure that is fixed. It is. I'm going to refresh the page. Okay, so that error is gone. So one thing that I'm seeing right here is that the sources tab showed that error as well. Okay, let me show you that again. So if I put a W right here, a capital W, which that ID does not exist, no errors are showing up here yet because this function hasn't been run. But if I say 245, 45, and 17, you can see that I have this red X right here, which shows up in the console. And it also shows up right here, and I can hover over this, and it says cannot read property value of null, which means that this value is of something that's null, which doesn't exist. So whatever this computed is wrong because it's null. So there's no value, and nothing will end up here. And you can see that nothing happened on the page. I hit this volume button, and nothing happened. Meanwhile, over here, this error keeps on popping up every single time. If I didn't have these dev tools open, I wouldn't have seen that. I would just be looking at this blank page and being like, why isn't this working? Okay, so really helpful for finding errors. All right, but now let's say that I didn't know why this was going wrong. Okay, I could put a breakpoint right here and run the function again. Now, what this breakpoint does is it actually stops the code from executing and it just pauses it until I tell it to keep going. So we're still sitting at 18 errors because I clicked the button 18 times. But right now I can actually hover over document and see that it indeed is not null. All of this stuff are things inside of the document item in JavaScript. And then I can look at get element by ID. It is a function defined inside a document. And then I can't really hover over this yet, but if I highlight this whole thing, then I can hover over it and it says that it's null. So I know that there's nothing wrong with document, nothing wrong with get element by ID, but that width is an ID that is not in the program. Okay, so I'm going to come back here, change that, save it, refresh, and then run this again. Okay, still stops here, still hover over this, it's there, same deal. Now, if I highlight this whole thing and hover over it, it shows everything that is available inside of the input item that ID found. There's a lot of stuff here. 99% of it we're not going to touch in this class. Okay, but out of those billion things that are in here, one of them is the value. Okay, so I can hover over this or select this whole thing and then hover over it, and you can see the value that it gets is 245, the string that I put in there. Okay, so right here, if I want the code to continue, I can hit this next function call button, which is F10. So I'm just going to click F10, and I can hover over W and see it got 245, exactly what I wanted. Hit F10 again, it got 45 for A, good. Hit F10 again, D, good. And then in here, we have all these different things, okay? And I can hover over each aspect and see what they are, make sure that they are what I want them to be. I can highlight this and check to see what it will compute, and this as well, and see, and just make sure that everything is working the way that I want it to be working. Okay, and then I can highlight over this whole thing and see what it will get for the final volume, hit F10, and I can see that it's exactly the same. Okay, and then if any errors are popping up in here along the way, it'll stop you, or you'll see, oh, that's not a number. That is wrong. There's something that I did wrong there. You'll notice that I'm using parse float on all of these, and that's because this right here, if I hover over just this, or select just that, it shows 245 as a string. But when I parse it, it shows 245 as an integer, or as just a float value number. Okay, and so you can use this debugger to really drill down and show you what these different values are. Okay, and then this volume has a large decimal, and so I wrote 2 fixed, and then I decided that I want it to just show 1 decimal point. Okay, 0.5. And then if I hit F8, that's the same as clicking this button, which is just saying, okay, let it go or go until my next breakpoint. And there wasn't anything else in the code. So it just outputted that value to the output div. Okay, so this is an extremely powerful tool. You'll be able to run any code that you want here, and you can put in breakpoints. I usually like to put in breakpoints at the beginning of a function, the first line inside of a function. So not here, oops, sorry. So not right here where we define a function, but in the next line, the first line inside of its curly brackets. Because then once you click on a button to call a function, you'll actually see what's going on inside that function. Okay. With that said, if I saw that these three values were exactly what I wanted them to be, then later on, while I'm continuing to debug to see what's wrong with my program, I can remove that breakpoint and put this one in here. And then if I push it again, it'll jump straight down to here, and I can continue to see what's going on in the program without having to jump through those first few steps. Okay. So that is one effective way to use the sources tab. Okay. It shows those errors. You can use the debuggers to step through it, the debugger to step through it. You can see over here, it also shows different local variables that we have. What a global variable means is a variable that's defined outside of a function. So for example, if I had var, this is a global variable equals 5, and I refresh this page, okay, you can see my global variables, I would have that one that I defined somewhere in here. Let's go find it. Right here, okay? Because it was defined outside of a function. So it'll be accessible in any function that I have. And then my local variables remain the same, just with those inside of this function, okay? We have all these different things. This one is to deactivate all breakpoints. If I wanted to just try running it without the breakpoints but leave my tools open, I could do that. But yeah, don't confuse this with the Elements tab. They can look kind of similar sometimes. The Elements tab is not interactive in JavaScript. Okay, if you want to mess with the JavaScript, debug it, you have to be in the Sources tab. The Elements tab is, however, interactive in the HTML. So I could say adding HTML stuff here, and it'll add it. Okay, but the Sources tab, you can't do that down here. It's only to, it just is dealing with the JavaScript code. Okay, so if you have any questions about that, let me know. But those are some helpful tips to help you get started with the Sources tab and with debugging.